Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're jumping straight into something that I think really flips the script on one of the biggest transactions in anyone's life, selling a home.
Right.
Because for decades the conversation has been the same, right? If a house isn't selling,
It's the price. Everyone says it's the price.
it's always the price. Or, there's some giant scary defect hiding somewhere. But the source material we're looking at today, it just presents this completely counterintuitive idea.
Well, yeah. The data shows that most homes don't get into a negotiation and then fail.
They just never get the offer in the first place.
Exactly. It's the silence that's the real mystery. And that silence is what's so confusing for good sellers. People who really tried.
They put on the new coat of paint, maybe they updated the kitchen a little.
And then they're just sitting there month after month just wondering, why isn't anyone even making an offer?
Yeah.
They feel like they did the big things right, so the silence makes no sense.
So that's our mission today. We want to cut through that confusion and really understand the quiet reasons for that silence. We're looking for the things that are, a lot more subtle than a bad roof. Why does the money and effort sometimes just not translate into interest?
And this is where my own experience, it just lines up perfectly with the sources.
Yeah.
When I started out, I thought what everyone thinks.
Big problems kill deals.
Big problems kill deals, a bad foundation, needs a new HVAC system, 5,000 problems. But then I started noticing this really weird pattern.
Okay.
The houses with the biggest, most obvious, most expensive problems, they still got offers.
Really?
Yeah. People would negotiate them way down, of course, but the offer would come in.
And the ones that were, pretty clean, well-maintained, priced okay.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Nothing. Just crickets. Total silence. And seeing that happen over and over, that's what leads to the core idea we're digging into today.
Which is?
The huge, crucial difference between a deal breaker and a deal preventer.
Okay, let's unpack that. I think that's the aha moment right there for anyone listening. Because when we think of a deal failing, we're all thinking of the deal breaker.
We are. And a deal breaker is all about clarity. It's about cost.
It's the big stuff you find on an inspection report.
Exactly. Structural issues, a roof that's got to be replaced yesterday, major system failures, things where you call a pro and you get a very clear, very scary quote.
And the assumption is that's what stops the sale cold. But you're saying that's not quite right.
It's not. Because what's so fascinating is that these big deal breakers, they can actually be negotiated. They feel
Wow.
quantifiable. Fair, in a weird way.
How so?
Because if a buyer has already decided they want the house, emotionally decided, they've already pictured their furniture in the rooms.
They're measuring for curtains in their head.
They are invested. At that point, the $20,000 roof is just a hurdle. It's a number on a page. It's a defined problem with a defined solution.
So the buyer just says, okay, I love it, but it needs a new roof, so I'm offering $20,000 less.
Precisely. The problem affects the price, not the decision to actually make an offer. That emotional hook is already in.
That is such a key distinction.
It's everything.
Okay, so now let's talk about the real villain of our story today, the deal preventer.
The quiet killer, yeah. These are the small things, the little frictions that add up.
And it's almost never the price.
Almost never. And it's not one big repair either. It's all the tiny little things that stop a buyer from ever getting emotionally invested to begin with.
Right. And the source material really hammers this point about momentum. It says interest always comes first.
Always. If you don't have that initial spark of interest, you're never going to get to the negotiation table. It's not that deals fall apart, it's that they never ever begin.
Because the big stereo problem, at least, has a clear path forward.
It does. It might be an expensive path, but it's a path. The small stuff, the deal preventers, they just create this wall of doubt and uncertainty, and the buyer just stops in their tracks.
And that moves us right into the psychology of it all, the emotional weight of these small things. Because the seller is thinking like an accountant.
Right. They're looking at their bottom line.
But the buyer is they're a tired person looking for a safe place to land.
100%. A buyer is not walking through with a clipboard trying to calculate ROI.
Yeah.
They're asking a much, much simpler question.
Which is,
Do I feel good here? Do I feel comfortable? Is this going to be easy?
let's talk about that for a second. The state of the modern buyer, they are exhausted.
Oh, completely exhausted. Think about it. They've been scrolling Zillow for weeks. They've driven all over the city. They've probably lost out on 2 other houses already.
They're just drained.
And when the human brain is that overwhelmed, it doesn't analyze things anymore.
It simplifies.
It simplifies. The question isn't, Is this the best financial decision over 20 years? The question becomes, do I have the energy for this right now?
And they just choose the path of least resistance, the house that feels the easiest.
Even if another house is a technically better deal, the feeling of easy wins.
And that's where this quiet elimination process begins, right? The source has these really specific examples.
Yeah, and it's never some big dramatic moment. It's not a burst pipe during the showing.
No.
It's a buyer who just pauses in a doorway.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking at scuff marks on the trim. Or they see a faint water stain on a ceiling corner.
Or they hear a weird noise from the furnace.
A little ticking sound or a musty smell. And here's the key part.
They don't say anything.
They say nothing. They internalize it.
Yeah.
And in that moment, they just stop imagining themselves living there. That's the veto. It happens silently, right behind their eyes.
So what's that inner monologue? What's the thought that's actually killing the deal right there in the hallway?
It's one simple, powerful phrase, I don't want another project.
Even if it's a tiny project.
Even if the project is tightening a doorknob. The buyer isn't just buying a house. They're trying to buy their future weekends, their peace of mind. They are buying the absence of a to-do list.
Okay, but then why don't sellers just fix these things? I mean, if it's a loose hinge, a scuff mark that's so cheap, is the real deal preventer the seller's own inertia?
I think you just hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
That is the core of it. Sellers have what you could call a maintenance blindness.
They just don't see it anymore.
They've lived with it for years. It's invisible. So when their agent points it out, they immediately jump to the cost. Why would I fix that? It's a $10 part. The buyer can do it.
And they were completely missing the psychological impact of that $10 problem.
Completely. Which brings us to the real damage these things do. It's not just about inconvenience. It's about trust. These little things are trust signals, or rather trust destroyers.
A buyer has no reason to trust the seller. They're strangers, so they're looking for clues.
Exactly. The brain uses the visible data to guess about the invisible data. It's a cognitive shortcut.
The source has this perfect anecdote to illustrate this. The loose outlet cover.
It's my favorite example because it's so small and so powerful. So the buyer is walking through. They see a single plastic outlet cover that's just a little bit crooked, maybe hanging off the wall by a millimeter.
They might point at it, might not even say a word.
Right. And they move on. The seller, if they were there, wouldn't even register it. But later, in the car, the buyer says to their agent,
If they didn't fix that...
What else did they ignore that I can't see?
And that's the killer. That's the fatal connection. They're using a 10-cent piece of plastic to judge the quality of the $10,000 electrical system behind the wall.
And now you see the huge disconnect. The seller sees that outlet cover, and their brain says, cost. That's cheap to fix.
10 cents for a screw?
2 minutes of my time.
But the buyer doesn't hear cheap. They see that loose cover and they hear uncertainty. They hear stress.
They hear a whole chain of events. I have to call an electrician. I have to take a half day off work for them to show up. What if they find something else? What if the whole box is loose?
Their brain is calculating the time, the stress, the potential for a small problem to become a big one.
The ripple effect. The emotional weight of that imagined hassle just crushes the deal before it can even be written up.
It's a defense mechanism, really.
Yeah.
If you can't trust the seller with the small, visible stuff, why on earth would you trust them with the big, invisible stuff?
You wouldn't. And that leads directly to what we talked about earlier, the ghosting effect.
Just silence.
Buyers don't call up and complain about a dirty baseboard. They don't write an email about a flickering light bulb.
They just say, you know what, let's go see the next one on the list. And they never come back.
The friction was just a little too high, so they moved on to an easier option. And the seller is left wondering what happened.
So if you're out there listening and you're prepping a home, or really prepping anything for a critical first impression, what's the takeaway? The source talks about pre-sale walkthroughs.
Right, but not in the way people think. It's not about finding huge, expensive things to renovate.
No.
The entire point is to remove the small frictions that buyers never explain out loud.
So you're literally getting down on your hands and knees and thinking like a skeptical, tired buyer.
You're cleaning the grout.
Yeah.
You're tightening every single cabinet handle. You're making sure every light bulb works. You're clearing the clutter away from the furnace so they can see it easily.
Even the dead flowers in the pot on the front porch.
Especially those, because dead plants signal neglect, and neglect destroys trust. The goal isn't perfection. It's not possible.
The goal is momentum.
The goal is to build trust and comfort so that the buyer can get emotionally invested. You clear away all the tiny little roadblocks, And then, once they love the house,
Then you can negotiate the big stuff.
then you can talk about the roof.
Absolutely. So the core lesson for you, the learner, is really grasping that difference. The difference between a big negotiable problem and a small, silent, trust-killing offer preventer.
Mm-hmm.
Because that idea applies to so much more than just a house. It applies to any high-stakes interaction where that first impression matters so much.
It really does. And maybe that's the final thought to leave people with. If a seller's focus on cost, that it's cheap to fix mindset, makes them blind to a buyer's focus on time and stress, that I don't want another project feeling.
But what's the parallel in our own lives?
Exactly. What are the small, easily fixable deal preventers in your professional life? A sloppy email signature, always being 2 minutes late, things that seem tiny, but are silently eroding trust and killing momentum, even when you're getting all the big stuff right.
What are the silent signals you're sending? Something to mull over.